You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and as promised, I'm going to recap all the big stories pertaining to yesterday's NBA draft. Now, the way I'm going to do that is by going in order of their impact on the draft. So even though the Al Horford trade was announced before the draft, I'm going to save that until I get to the 34th overall pick. Because that's the only 2020 pick that was dealt in that trade. Things went haywire when the Bulls got on the clock. The top three went as I expected it to. If you listen to the mock draft that I did with Nick, we nailed the top three. And we were close on a bunch of other things. This draft was weird, okay? No March Madness. We had to wait until November 18th to have the NBA draft. Yeah, we're going to get some things wrong. And yeah, these teams are going to get some guys wrong. I understand that. And you have to understand that too, as a fan. This wasn't an easy draft to scout for. But there's no excuse for what the Chicago Bulls did. For my money, taking Patrick Williams at 4 was easily the worst pick in the draft. You have all these guys to pick from. Okoro, Toppin, Hayes, Avdia, Halliburton, Vassell, and you take Patrick Williams. This is a guy who on my big board I had 16th overall. Nick was a lot higher on him than me. Watching him at FSU, I was just really underwhelmed. I understand that he has the frame you look for. 6'8", 225 pounds, 7-foot wingspan, and he's a really strong guy. I get that. Can guard multiple positions. But when you were watching FSU, did you notice Patrick Williams? This guy wasn't even the best player on his team. It was Devin Vassell. For God's sake, this guy never started a game at FSU. I understand that you can't read a lot into college stats, but it's important for Williams. This guy only averaged 9.2 points per game. Shot just 32% from beyond the arc. He averaged 4 rebounds a game, which I like, and he's good defensively. I get that. But as the 4th overall pick, you've got to have an impact on the offensive side of the ball. Williams is going to be a solid player. He's not going to bust or anything. But there are a lot of players taken behind him that are going to have better NBA careers. I knew there was a chance that Williams could go in the top 5. I never thought it would happen. I definitely thought he'd go in the top 10, but top 5, no way. Again, I knew there were some teams that were high on him, but not top 5. That was ridiculous. Now, I don't want to be called a Knicks hater for saying what I'm about to say. Yes, I hate the Knicks, but I can evaluate them unbiasedly. If the Knicks had taken Tyrese Halliburton, I'd be singing their praises here. But to take Obi Toppin at 8, how many power forwards do you need? You're really trying to bring the 90s Knicks back. Where's Toppin gonna play? Where's he gonna get his minutes? As a 6th man? You're gonna have Randall come off the bench? What are you gonna do? Tell me what you're gonna do. The Knicks needed a point guard. They needed a playmaker. Tyrese Halliburton falls into your lap at 8. You have the Pistons taking Killian Hayes over Tyrese Halliburton. There were a bunch of Knicks fans that didn't want them to take another international player. With Halliburton on the clock, it's a no-brainer for him, right? I mean, you want to tell me this is the best player available pick? You can make that argument. I personally had Avdija over Toppin on my board. I like Toppin. I like Toppin a lot. He's going to be a really exciting player to watch. And here's the one thing I'll say. This actually kinda opens the door to a Westbrook trade. The Rockets may want a guy like Julius Randle. A really good young player. We keep forgetting because Randle's been in the league for a while. He's on the younger side of things. He'll be 26 when the season starts. You've got to think that Kevin Knox would appeal to the Rockets. They have a glaring hole at small forward. There are some Knicks fans that don't want to trade Knox. I would do it. Knox, Randle, the Dallas picks. You've got something there. I'm not sure if that would be enough, but you've got the framework for a Westbrook trade. The only way this pick makes sense is if the Knicks are going to make a big trade. And I'll say this. A starting lineup of Westbrook, Quickly, Barrett, Toppin, and Robinson can fight for an 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. It can. You've got to fill out the bench the right way. You've got to bring in some good veterans, but look, this is a weak Eastern Conference. But until that trade happens, I have to kill this pick. Where is he going to play? That's the thing. Even if you wanted to trade for Westbrook, you can make the argument that just taking Halliburton is better. What would you rather have? Westbrook, Quickly, Barrett, Toppin, and Robinson? Or Halliburton, Barrett, Knox, Randall, Robinson? I personally take the latter. But if you would take the former, that's fine. The only way that this pick makes sense is if the Knicks are going to trade for Russell Westbrook. It's just that simple. The Wizards taking Deni Avdija at 9 was one of the biggest steals of the draft. I absolutely loved watching him play. He's 6'9", but he handles the ball like a point guard. I hate to say this, I really do, but there's a little bit of LeBron in him. There's a little bit of Durant in him. I'm not saying he's going to turn into those guys, but when you watch him play, you can see it a little bit. He improved dramatically as a defender. From last year to this year, it's night and day. He does everything you want him to do defensively. He can block shots. He can get in the passing lanes. He gets over screens. And I'll say this, I think he landed in the perfect spot with the Wizards. John Wall, Bradley Beal, Avdija, Rui Hachimura, and maybe Thomas Bryant. You've got the makings of a solid team there. Also, DC has a sizable Jewish population, so I think he'll be really comfortable there. This was a great pick for the Wizards. It's kind of funny how 8, 9, 10 unfolded. Bad pick, great pick, and then another bad pick. The Suns do this. They just make bad picks. They get it wrong. Yes, Devin Booker. Yes, DeAndre Ayton. I understand that. But last year they took Cameron Johnson. Way, way, way higher than he should have been taken. And this year they took Jalen Smith. A guy who I had the Nets taking in my mock draft. I had him 18th on my big board. The Suns took him at 10. There's no way this guy was a top 10 prospect. See, here's the thing. He benefited from there being no March Madness. That's what I said during the mock draft. There were going to be players that suffer because there was no March Madness. But what we learned is that cuts the other way. A guy like Williams and Smith were taken really high because of their great physical profiles. Smith is 6'10", 225 pounds, an over 7-foot wingspan. He can play both front court positions. Without March Madness to look at, these teams pivoted towards physical specimens. It was very interesting to see that. I didn't think it would go that way. But having said that, you just didn't see the impact that you wanted him to have at Maryland. He's not very fast. He's not a good passer. If he goes up against a guy like Rudy Gobert or Andre Drummond or Hassan Whiteside, he's going to get bullied in the interior. There's no way he can match up with those guys. His best fit is going to be as a stretch 4, which he'll probably play a lot of in Phoenix, since they already have DeAndre Ayton. But there were better power forwards available. Precious Achiuwa, Sadiq Bey. There were just better picks that the Suns could have made. I like Jalen Smith. I think he's going to have a solid career. Reminds me a lot of P.J. Brown. But he's not going to have a career worthy of a top 10 pick. The Kings finally stopped the slide of Tyrese Halliburton at 12. And you've got to give him credit for that. This is a team that has a question mark at guard. Not De'Aaron Fox, not Buddy Hield, but Bogdan Bogdanović. The sign and trade with the Bucks is dead. So what's going to happen with Bogdanović? The Kings needed to get some insurance. And they got a great insurance policy in Halliburton. A guy who I had 7th on my big board, going 7th in the mock draft. Think about this starting lineup for a minute. De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, and Marvin Bagley. That's a really good small ball lineup. The Kings have struggled historically in the draft. But you know what? They've gotten some things right recently. De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, and I think we can put Halliburton there also. Love watching this kid play. Crazy wingspan, incredibly smart, fantastic shooter. Reminds me a lot of Sean Livingston before the injury when I watch him play. After Halliburton was taken, the Pelicans panicked. I got the sense after they took Kira Lewis Jr. that they were coveting Halliburton. They were salivating over the possibility of him falling to 13. And when he wasn't there, they panicked. Lewis was a guy who I had 23rd on my big board. He went 22nd in the mock draft. There were point guards that were so much better than him still available. R.J. Hampton and Cole Anthony are gonna have better careers than Kira Lewis Jr. I mean, what boggles my mind is, if you wanted Halliburton that badly, just move up a couple spots. You have the extra firsts from the Anthony Davis trade. You don't need to make a panic pick. It's okay if you had Lewis over Hampton and Anthony, but you have to know that you can get him later. Trade down or trade up for Halliburton. To take him at 13, that doesn't work for me. I like the influence that Avery Johnson had on him. And you can see a little Avery Johnson in his game. There's more Darren Collison, but there's a little Avery Johnson in there also. He's crazy athletic. He can score, I understand that, but the guy's also built like a pencil. He can't finish in traffic. The Pelicans had the opportunity to replace Jrue Holiday with Tyrese Halliburton. Instead, they replaced him with Kira Lewis Jr. That doesn't work for me. There was a trade involving the 17th overall pick. And a couple other picks, for that matter. The Thunder traded Ricky Rubio and the 25th and 28th overall picks to the Timberwolves for the 17th overall pick and James Johnson. So Ricky Rubio is going back to the Timberwolves. Good job there. Rubio didn't want to be a member of the Thunder. He sees the writing on the wall. That team isn't going to be very good. He wants to win. And he gets to go back to where it all started. I kind of like the idea of Rubio as a sixth man for the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves also got Leandro Bolmaro and Jaden McDaniels as a result of this trade. So, good job by Gerson Rosas. He hit a home run in this draft. James Johnson is probably going to be bought out by the Thunder. I don't see him fitting with what they want to do. I'm not a big James Johnson fan. I understand he's a gritty player and he can stretch the floor a little bit, but watching him play, he never excited me. The Timberwolves easily won this trade. I'll take Rubio, Bolmaro, and McDaniels over Johnson and Alexei Pokusevski. It's nothing against Pokusevski. I really like him. He's a physical freak. 7 feet tall, under 200 pounds, over 7 foot wingspan. His standing reach is over 9 feet. He was the youngest player in this draft class. He won't turn 19 until the day after Christmas. I like Pokusevski. I think he's going to have a good career. But the Timberwolves got a lot better here. They're making a push for the playoffs. They have a really good core now. Russell, Edwards, Towns, Culver, Rubio, McDaniels. I'm not saying they're gonna make the playoffs, but they'll be in the hunt. There's no question about that. There was another trade involving the 19th overall pick, involving my beloved Nets. It was a 3-team trade, but it's really easy to understand. The Nets are getting Landry Shamet. The Clippers are getting Luke Kennard. And the Pistons are getting Rodney McGruder and Sadiq Bey, who was picked with the 19th overall pick. This trade makes sense for the Pistons. They needed to upgrade their front court. Obviously, they traded Andre Drummond at the deadline, and Blake Griffin isn't getting any younger. Now they're going to be anchored by Isaiah Stewart and Sadiq Bey for the next at least 2 years. That's pretty good. I don't mind that at all. I mean, I liked Bey. I liked Bey a lot. He would have made perfect sense for the Nets. Prototypical stretch 4. Can guard multiple positions. Very high floor. It's basically a guarantee that he's going to be in the NBA for at least 5 to 10 years. The Clippers, in essence, trading Shamet and McGruder for Kennard is interesting. Kennard is a shooter. The guy can't defend to save his life. But what do the Clippers have a lot of? Great defenders. Kawhi, Paul George, Patrick Beverley. They could stand to add some shooting. I love the idea of Kennard with the Clippers. As for my beloved Nets, Landry Shamet makes a ton of sense for him. This basically means that Spencer Dinwiddie's going to be traded. Anthony Puccio, who has a lot of connections within the Nets, said that there's a verbal agreement on a Harden trade. If that's true, then Sean Marks knows the holes he has to fill. What's evident to me in the Nets trading for Shamet is that Spencer Dinwiddie is in that trade. So, Marks knows he needs a backup point guard. And he needs a really good one because Kyrie Irving has injury concerns. Can James Harden play point guard? Absolutely. No question. But so can Shamet. He did it a lot last year for the Clippers. He did it a lot at Wichita State. Is Spencer Dinwiddie better than Landry Shamet? The answer is yes. But Shamet is a damn good consolation prize. This guy averaged just over 9 points per game last year, shot 37.5% from beyond the arc, just under 40.5% from the field, hits a lot of his free throws. I like the idea of Shamet replacing Dinwiddie. I really think that Dinwiddie's going to go to the Rockets in a Harden trade. If he doesn't, then this move doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But again, I really think James Harden's going to be a Brooklyn Net, and I will be dancing on my roof when it happens. The rich got richer the pick after when the Heat took Precious Achiuwa. Achiuwa was a guy who I had 11th on my big board. He went 13 in the mock draft. It's kind of scary to think about him with the Heat. Jay Crowder is a free agent. Achiuwa can very easily fill that Crowder role. Can guard multiple positions. Extremely aggressive. Can stretch the floor. He's kind of raw. I understand that. But Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra are going to be able to work with him. He's crazy athletic, and I think he's going to be a really good player with the Heat for a long time. Moving on now to the Nuggets taking R.J. Hampton at 24. Fantastic pick. He'll be a great backup for Jamal Murray. Here's a guy who, when we were scouting this draft a year ago, was widely projected to be like a top 3, top 5 pick. Remember how big a deal it was when he said he was going to go overseas? That hurt his draft stock, though. He wasn't ready. He was outmatched. There were games where he looked like a boy among men. You've heard of a man among boys? He was a boy among men. But the thing that I love about Hampton is when you project his game to the next level, you get the sense that he can be a great player in this league. He actually reminds me a lot of Jamal Murray when I watch him play. It's kind of weird how the Nuggets did that. Look, he's raw. There are going to be a ton of growing pains for him. He's not going to dominate right away. But give him time. This guy's a great athlete. He's 6'5", can score multiple ways. Give him time. Let him make his rookie mistakes. Don't pounce on him early. He landed in the perfect spot in Denver. Small market. Won't be asked to play a lot with Jamal Murray in front of him. He'll be fine. That pick's going to work out. There's no question about that in my mind. As for the pick right after him, Emmanuel Quickley, I don't get it. That one doesn't make sense to me. This was a guy who I had ranked 42nd on my big board. In the mock draft, I had him going 59th. Look, this guy dominated at high school. He dominated in international play. He dominated in college. I understand that. But this kid is just so one-dimensional. He's a great shooter. Okay? This guy's gonna hit a bunch of threes in the NBA. But that's it. He reminds me a lot of Anthony Morrow when I watch him play. He's very coachable. John Calipari raved about him. The Knicks have a Kentucky connection. Kenny Payne left Kentucky to be an assistant coach for the Knicks. I get the Kentucky connection. I really do. But I just don't see this guy translating into a great player in the NBA. Best case scenario, he's Anthony Morrow. Worst case scenario, he's a G-leaguer. This kid's a terrible defender, can't penetrate. For a Knicks team that really needed a point guard, Quickly's not going to work out. He'll be quickly ran out of town by Knicks fans. Thank you very much. I take pride in my bad jokes. Don't feel bad, Knicks fans. The Boston Celtics also made a bad pick. It's kind of interesting. A lot of these teams reached for perimeter shooting. Just shows where the league is going. Peyton Pritchard was a guy who I had 36th on my big board. In the mock draft, he went 38th. This guy dominated at Oregon. I understand that. I loved watching him play. I really did. And he's a really good defender. I get that. But usually those college superstars don't translate that well into the NBA. The impact that he had with Oregon reminds me of the impact that Jimmer Fredette had with BYU. That's who I see in him. Look, he can shoot from anywhere. He's a tough player. He'll be a good backup for Kemba Walker. But this was a reach. Trey Jones was better than him. Cassius Winston was much better than him. I really don't like the Peyton Pritchard pick. So now I'll talk about the Al Horford trade. And this was a fantastic job by Daryl Morey in moving on from Horford's contract. All he had to give up was the 34th overall pick and a first rounder in 2025. That Horford contract very quickly became one of the worst in the NBA. Him and Embiid couldn't play together. This is a Sixers team that needs shooting. It doesn't get much better than Danny Green in that regard. I'm not the biggest Green fan in the world, but if you put him on the Sixers, that's scary. In addition to trading for Danny Green, the Sixers also traded for Seth Curry. In less than 12 hours, Daryl Morey got rid of one of the worst contracts in the NBA and absolutely and completely addressed his team's biggest need, which was, beyond a shadow of a doubt, three-point shooting. Think about this lineup for a minute. Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid. Maybe you can flip-flop Harris and Simmons however Doc Rivers wants to do it. But how are you guarding that lineup? You've got two guys in Embiid and Simmons that can kill you in the interior. Two guys in Curry and Green that can kill you on the perimeter. And Tobias Harris, who can kill you both ways. The Sixers also added Terrence Ferguson in addition to Green. Good defender, has shown an ability to shoot threes. Last year, took a major step back. No question about that. But Doc Rivers can work with him. Ferguson will be fine with the Sixers. Him and Matisse Thybulle together, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better wing bench. They're both fantastic defenders. As for the guys that were taken with the picks that the Sixers traded, the Thunder took Theo Maledon. Really good outside shooter. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. As far as international prospects go, I feel like he's one of the safer ones that we've seen in a long time. He has great size, really long wingspan, can guard multiple positions. I'd like him to be a better penetrator, but I think Maledon is going to have a really good career in the NBA. I like the idea of him and Shea playing together a lot. In the Seth Curry trade, the Sixers traded Josh Richardson, a guy who I think is going to thrive playing with Luka. He'll get Richardson more open looks than he got in Philly, and I think Richardson's in line for a really good season. He's an instant sleeper candidate for me. And they took Tyler Bay with the 36th overall pick. The thing with Bay is he has no offensive game whatsoever. This guy just isn't going to be able to score consistently in the NBA. He doesn't have the inside game for it. He doesn't have the outside game for it. What he does have is the defensive game to thrive in the NBA. This guy was the Pac-12's Defensive Player of the Year. Quick guy, can guard multiple positions. He can guard 1 through 5, to tell you the truth. He reminds me so much of Andre Roberson, it's not even funny. There's a role for Tyler Bay in the NBA. See, I'm a poet and I don't even know it. So now that we're in the second round, I'm just going to rapid fire through some guys who I think are going to have solid NBA careers. I hate when teams throw away second round picks. Because you can find guys in that round who can contribute for you. It happens all the time. At 40, the Kings took Robert Woodard II, a guy who I had going 27 in the mock draft. The Kings were one of the big winners of this draft. They picked a sliding Halliburton and a sliding Woodard. I love his frame. He can guard multiple positions. He's a 3-and-D guy. This guy is a really good three-point shooter. I think he's going to have a really good career in the NBA. The best way I can describe him would be a poor man's Tobias Harris. The pick after that, the Spurs took Tre Jones because of course they did. That's what the Spurs do. They make really smart picks. Jones improved leaps and bounds his sophomore season. If he had come out his freshman year, he would have gone undrafted. But without Zion, Barrett, and Reddish, Jones was able to show that he has what it takes to be a good player in this league. His shooting improved leaps and bounds. And like I said, this is a league that's prioritizing perimeter shooting. He makes smart decisions. Very good defensively. Won ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Tre Jones reminds me a lot of Tyus Jones when I watch him play. This is a guy who I had 27th on my big board, and the Spurs took him at 41. You gotta love it. The Warriors received a curveball right before the draft started with the news that Klay Thompson has a lower leg injury. There were some rumblings that because of that, they'd take LaMelo Ball. They made the smart decision in taking James Wiseman, but you had the sense that they were going to take another guard. And they took a really talented one in Nico Mannion. A guy who can start for them right away. A guy who has all the tools you look for. This guy was 22nd on my big board. Nick took him at 30. He went 48 to the Warriors. The rich got richer. They had a fantastic draft. The thing with Mannion is you wanted him to dominate more at Arizona, but he didn't. He kind of faded into the background. There were a bunch of games where Josh Green looked better than him. But this is a guy with all the physical tools. He can start right away and hold his own. There's a little bit of Mike Bibby in him. How's that for a weird player comp? Like I said last week, I love doing NBA player comps. They're so much fun. Cassius Winston was the 26th best player in this draft, in my opinion. Nick had him going 34th. The Wizards took him at 53. They get a little John Wall / Bradley Beal insurance. There were very few players in this draft that ran the pick and roll as well as Winston. Can kill you in transition if you're not paying attention. He loves those pull-up threes. He's going to be able to contribute instantly on the Wizards. With him and Avdija, the Wizards hit a home run in this draft. Winston reminds me a lot of Mario Chalmers. The last thing that I want to talk about is the pick that the Brooklyn Nets made. They had the 55th overall pick. If you look at their roster right now, they have a glaring hole at backup power forward. Their bench, when the Pacers were on the clock at 54, was, assuming the Harden trade goes through the way I think it will, Shamet, Brown, TLC, blank, and Claxton. They had to fill that blank. So with the Nets on the clock, I'm thinking they're going to take Reggie Perry. This is an easy pick. I had him 46th on my big board. He went 39 in the mock draft. It's not a crazy fall from 46 to 55, but it's still a fall. I was screaming for Perry. Then I saw that the Nets were going to take Jay Scrubb. I was really upset. Scrubb is a developmental guy. He's a guy who's going to need 2 years in the G League before he maybe becomes ready to play in the NBA. I mean, John Hollinger had a good joke. TLC isn't going to like him. He don't want no scrubs. See, the thing with Scrubb is, he went to John A. Logan College. That's in Southern Illinois. It's a junior college. Some people said he could turn into J.R. Smith. I didn't see that. On his best day, he's Malik Beasley. I think there's a big chance that we never see him in the NBA. He's going to need a ton of seasoning in the G League if he's going to get good. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was kind of upset about this pick. Then, Shams Charania dropped a Shams bomb. The Nets are going to trade this pick to the Clippers. Fantastic. Who do the Clippers take? None other than Reggie Perry. You couldn't script it any better. We don't know what the Nets got to move down. It could have been cash. It could have been a heavily protected second. But it doesn't matter because the Nets got their guy. There's a little bit of Bam Adebayo in Perry. He's learning how to stretch the floor. He's very good defensively. He can dominate in the low post. I think DeAndre Jordan's going to do a lot for Perry. There are some similarities there. Assuming the Nets don't sign a backup power forward in free agency, they can put Perry there, and I think he'll hold his own. Hell, even if they do, you can have Perry and Claxton compete for who's going to be the backup center. Great job by Sean Marks. I thought the Nets had a really good draft. The only way it could have been better is if the Harden trade had been announced right then and there. Alright, now I'll give you some miscellaneous Valk talk. And I'll start with Robinson Cano being suspended for the whole 2021 season for testing positive for the PED stanozolol. Obviously, Cano is a repeat offender, and this probably explains his resurgent 2020 season. After hitting .256 with 13 homers and 39 RBIs in 2019, Cano hit .316 with 10 homers and 30 RBIs last year. What a great parting gift by Brody, right? Just when you think you're done with him, you get this horror show. As if the trade couldn't look any worse. Now Cano's going to miss a whole year. But don't worry, he'll be back in time for his age 39 season. But this actually isn't all doom and gloom for the Mets. Cano's $24 million salary for this year is off the books. It gives the Mets a little more breathing room if Steve Cohen cares about the luxury tax. This also kind of clears up the lineup a little bit. Assuming they sign Real Muto, which I really think they're going to, the lineup looks like some combination of Real Muto, Alonso, Gimenez, Rosario, Davis, McNeil, Nimmo, and Conforto. With Cano in the fold, there was no room for Gimenez. And Gimenez played really well last year. He had 263. He had 8 steals. Truthfully, I don't think the Mets are going to do much else in free agency to address the lineup. I think all they have to do is sign Real Muto. Yes, the pitching staff needs work. DeGrom, Stroman, Peterson, and blank. Because Noah Syndergaard is out for part of 2021. That's where Uncle Stevie's going to look to make his second splash. I think he's going to go hard after Bauer and an innings eater. Now, I'm not crazy about the fit of Bauer in New York, but I do think Cohen's going to go after him. And Sandy Alderson sang his praises during an interview. This could really be a blessing in disguise for the Mets. Yes. It stinks that you're going to have that albatross on your books for a little more. God only knows how Cano's going to look coming back from the suspension. But as for right now, it clears up the lineup. And it gives you a little more financial freedom to sign Real Muto and maybe Bauer. Like I said, this could be a blessing in disguise for the Mets. Moving on now to Cardinals-Seahawks, a really good Thursday night game. And this is a hugely important one, too. There's currently a 3-way tie for who's going to win the NFC West. The Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks are tied at 6-3. Whoever wins this game moves into first place. Whoever loses it moves into third place. Obviously, the Cardinals have the great offense. Cliff Kingsbury has done a fantastic job. I was 100% wrong about him. Kyler Murray looks like he's going to be a really special player for a long time. The throw he made to DeAndre Hopkins, I still haven't recovered from it. It's absolutely incredible. He has Christian Kirk. He has Larry Fitzgerald. He has Andy Isabella. Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds in the running game. The Cardinals' offense is stacked. And their offensive line is solid. DJ Humphries, Justin Pugh, Mason Cole. Justin Murray would be at right guard, but he's out. Even then, though, the Cardinals have J.R. Sweezy backing him up. Sweezy's a former Super Bowl winner. It's a pretty good guy to have as a backup. And Kelvin Beachum, the former Jet, is their really good right tackle. Defensively, though, the Cardinals don't scare me too much. There are really only a couple guys who I'm going to key in on if I'm an offensive coordinator, and that's Budda Baker and Isaiah Simmons. Other than them, Patrick Peterson has had a disappointing season. Jordan Hicks has had a disappointing season. Byron Murphy hasn't taken the leap that you'd want him to. if the Cardinals are gonna make a run in the playoffs this year, they're gonna need to shore up their defense. I understand it looks good when you look at the stats, but that's skewed heavily by 2 games against the Jets and Cowboys. The eye test doesn't lie. They're not a great defense. Then again, neither are the Seahawks. The Legion of Boom is dead. The stats don't lie here. This is a dreadful Seahawks defense. I mean, they have a few good players. Bobby Wagner, Poona Ford, and KJ Wright. But that's it. This is a Seahawks defense that is the 5th worst in the NFL when you look at points against per game. They're a very similar team to the Cardinals. This is the epitome of that Spider-Man meme, with the 2 of them pointing at each other. Obviously, the Seahawks have Russell Wilson. One of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, you don't need me to tell you that. Obviously, they have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. You don't need me to tell you that. Their running game scares me, though. I understand that Russell Wilson is a great runner. But you want the running backs to do some of the heavy lifting. And Chris Carson hasn't impressed me. Carlos Hyde hasn't impressed me. I'd like DJ Dallas to get a little more of an opportunity. Their offensive line is really talented. Dwayne Brown is one of, if not the best, offensive tackle in football. Mikey Upati can still play. Their center would be Ethan Pocic, but he's out. Kyle Fuller will be their starting center tonight, probably. I weep for humanity. The Cardinals did hit a home run in the 3rd round by taking Damian Lewis. He's had a fantastic rookie season. And Brandon Shell, former Jet, has had a nice resurgence in Seattle. These are 2 really similar teams. It's tough for me to pick a winner. I think it's going to be a close game, a 1-score game, a battle all throughout. But ultimately, I think Kingsbury's going to come up with something crazy to utterly destroy that anemic Seahawks defense. Give me the Cardinals tonight. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying, I just talked to the doctor. He told me her contraptions were an hour apart.